Welcome, welcome, Wise Chat. Sorry for the delay. Producer Henry here saying thank you for joining us and liking that stream. It is Wednesday, September 11th. Mike will be with us in just a moment, and I feel like I'm forgetting something. I'll consult y'all in a moment. Oh, the debate. There's been a huge debate going on. I wanted to know everybody's thoughts on this because the admins over at Letterboxd removed End of Evangelion from the top 250 and top 100 films list of all time. They said because it's part of a series, it doesn't count for some reason. And I'm wondering if that means stuff like Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, Pat Labor 2, the X-Files movies, the Spider-Man movies, anything that exists because of a pre-existing series or franchise or property, does that count too? Or are they just taking Evangelion out for reasons unknown? What are some of your favorite movies that aren't standalone? Go ahead and throw some out in the chat. I know some people were also talking of the Breaking Bad movie. The Sopranos has Many Saints of Newark, which requires you to kind of watch all The Sopranos to understand what's going on, but that still seems to count as a movie. So I don't know. What is a movie? It's a very, very curious question, and it's been a big old fight over the weekend.
Well, here's the story. I'm gonna tell this story as I, you know, get things set up. We're starting late because my work provided computer that they're struggling to want to give me a new one for. Um, it doesn't work well. But here's the story. It was September 11th, 2001. Does that mean was September 11th? Was it 23 years ago now?
Yeah.
Wow. Um, let's see. And it was a big day for me, September 11th, uh, 2001, because I had arranged a first date with someone I had a huge crush on. She was I think she was the captain of the volleyball team. I was a junior and she was a senior, which in my high school was crazy. Like I definitely felt like at that point, like, I was having my cradle robbed or whatever. And I was just so excited. We were gonna go get frozen yogurt for our date from TCBY, which I think stood for This Can't Be Yogurt. Um, the point being that the yogurt was so good it couldn't be yogurt. And I was thinking about it all day, and I walk into it was like second period, maybe first period. It was Dr. Simmons' English class. Unless you think because I had a teacher, called Doctor something that I went to a fancy school. It was a public high school. And I walked in the class and I did this thing that we started doing that year. I was sweaty a lot because it was Florida. And we do a thing where you put your hand in your armpit for the sweat and you'd rub it over your male friend's mouth and you'd say in his ear, ball sweat. It was the thing we were doing. It's 2001. It was a very different America. For those of you who are young, the country's best yogurt. Okay. For those of you thinking that's disgusting, that's retrograde, that's problematic, all of the above. But like I've said before, I'm old. It was 2001. It was a different culture back then. And as I rubbed my hand across my friend Daniel's face, saying ball sweat in his ear, Dr. Simmons says the audio and video sync is weird. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll work
getting a
on
bit
it.
of a lag
Oh,
on you.
yeah. This is crazy. Okay, I'm gonna make my video go away for a second, but I'm still gonna stick around audio-wise as I get this going. Sorry so much for the problems, friends. Give me 2 seconds. But I'm gonna continue just to tell the story because why not? Okay, let's see. Our output is that. Our input is that. Thank you everyone for your patience. But as I did the horrible thing, okay, here we go.
Yes, impressionist live
Technologies.
streaming. We just get to see how technology mediates our communications and our relationships in this modern era, and how
This
something
is
as simple as a
crazy.
sync messes things up. Are you on Wi-Fi or are you on a like wired connection?
I don't know. Now I'm just kind of like leaning into it. I'm just
You're
kind of.
talking and I don't even see your lips moving. Are you doing some sort of like VTuber style thing?
I wonder what will happen if I do this. Hold on. If I do my built-in camera on this horrible computer, is it still doing it, or am I like live now? Let me try one more thing. We have so many options camera-wise. Let's see what this one does. Wow. Today sucks. Is my main takeaway because nothing's working.
Yeah, I'm
Nothing is working.
still getting the video delay. Is the building okay? Has there
Hang
been
out with you
a
for a
critical
second. I'm very
infrastructure?
sorry. Yeah. I think there's a plane coming. I see it out the window. I'll
Uh-oh. Uh All right. So earlier I said Pat Labor, and I'm being told it is Pat Labor. I do agree it is probably Pat Labor. I mean, I've watched them subbed, and they don't say Labor with any kind of double O. So my apologies on that mistake. I'm gonna throw on the pre-roll just so we have something to jam out to while having this conversation. But yeah, I guess they don't want us talking about something today. I don't know if it's indie film, if it's classifications of anime film as movies equal to live action film, or if we just can't talk about the debate. We'll see what happens as soon as Michael gets back on. Thank you so much, Pizza Boy, for those memberships. We have a new Lord of the Chat. A pizza boy has risen to the occasion. I must adjust accordingly. I'll be right back while I make that change, even though we won't see it until Michael returns to us. Everybody, hold out hope. Our boy will be back. With the crowning of Pizza Boy as the new Lord of the Chat, I also must wonder what is the topping superiority hierarchy we're going with here. I've been pretty fond of pepperoni and mushroom my whole life. I do like peppers on a pizza as well. Feta cheese goes good. What's some of that stuff you like? Let me know on how you have your pies, chat. Sapphic, I'm right there with you on animation being right up there with live action. I saw Angel's Egg for the first time this year, and it left a huge impact. Quite a piece of cinema. All right, Michael is back. Here he comes.
I
You're
mean,
on.
this is temporary for now, because I'm trying to get Discord to work on my computer. You know, we have a big show today. We have so much to dig into. I'm so excited to talk about
While you
all
were
of it.
out as well, Pizza Boy gifted 20 memberships to the
Oh,
chat.
I saw. I made some comments in the chat about it. I was still trying to participate there. So Pizza Boy, it's more like Lord, Pizza Lord of the chat. I think that's amazing. I'm just doing a thing now where I stopped. Yeah, I guess I'll finish the story I was telling, and then we'll go from there. But again, this is ostensibly Wisecrack Live. I am supposedly Michael Burns. He's allegedly producer Henry. My quality is terrible right now, but Having technical difficulties over on this end. We run a shoestring operation. Telling a story took place 23 years ago, um, on September 11th, 2001. The gist of it was I'm walking into English class. I'm rubbing fake ball sweat on Daniel. I forget his last name's face, and I guess we shouldn't say last names. I don't know if that's professional. My English teacher yells at me, and I say, "What?" And she points to the TV. And things are not they're not going great. Um, the 9/11 had happened. So I was in school. We're processing real time. They put TVs in the rooms and they were on the little carts. Shout out if you remembered when the TVs in school were on the carts they would roll in. Um,
My school had TVs on carts with laser disc players.
oh, it's amazing. Um, so that it happens. We're all trying to make sense of it. And then let me see if I can set up my phone here, and that might make my life easier. Okay, I'm sorry for the quality not being great right now, guys, but um, this microphone I'm not even using, it's going through the phone right now, but it's here, so let's move it. Let's not have false pretense. But I then went to newspaper class in high school as a classic jock type. I was of course on the newspaper staff. And my stoner hippie newspaper teacher told us that it was our job to report on what was happening and let the truth get so I left and I went to the AP history teacher's class. I forget her name, but she looked like a portly Elton John. It is what it is. Um, and she gave me some good quotes on the historical significance of the 9/11 attacks. I remember she was telling me how we haven't really had an attack on the contiguous United States almost ever, yada, yada. Someone brought up overheads in the chat. That was real too. Um, and then the principal accosted me in the hallway. I'll name him. His name was Robert Lundquist. He's a prick. Uh, and started yelling at me and said it was too soon to be asking questions and reporting, trying to get the truth out. Yeah, so Elton John, basically. And, it was a tough day at school. Obviously, we were all trying to make sense of 9/11. It was weird to then go to like other classes and stuff. I'm sure some of you were in school. Some of you were legitimately maybe not born then. Uh, but I went home thinking, no matter what happened, I'm still going to go to the country's best yogurt with Brittany from the volleyball team tonight. And guys, I'll say this. She was out of my league. It was like a rom-com high school movie where the awkward nerdy kid somehow caught the attention of the cool, attractive, athletic young woman. And I get home and my dad gets back from work and he was not in a good mood. He wasn't a big fan of 9/11, as were most of us were not. And he tells me that I am not allowed to go to this country's best yogurt with Brittany. I say, why, Dad? He said, did you see what happened? I said, Dad, do you think that their next target is this country's best yogurt in Winter Springs, Florida? Do you think that's where they're going next? And he got real mad at me. And I don't remember if Brittany's parents were going to let her attend our soiree at the country's best yogurt. Um, and here's I guess the story has a happy ending in that, I did end up going to the homecoming dance with this young woman that year. We had a fun, short romance that ended because of me, because I was flirting with evangelicalism. This is gonna be too much, what I'm about to share with you guys. I'm gonna share something that's gonna be way too much because I don't know what else to do to create compelling content when I'm on a phone and the computer and everything's going horribly today. We should be talking about the election. We have a great guest coming up later. This is going bad. I haven't even shared the link to this yet because what am I sharing? What's even happening here? But I cut it off with this woman because my friends from the evangelical youth group I was going to said that she was bad because she was interested in potentially having consensual intercourse with the person that she was in a relationship with
Oh
when
no.
when we were both 17 years old. And And honestly, I'll be very honest. Some of the people I knew from like the youth groupie world did, I think I mean, they were horribly misogynistic and operating in kind of like a language that I think we would now call vaguely slut shamey in that they were convincing me that a young woman's own sexual desires were like bad. And it was a thing too where I was like not a creep that age. So like, I think often we think of high school boys as like, come on, let me do it, let me touch him. I was very much like, is it okay if I kiss you? May I hold your hand, miss? Let me get the door for you as we enter the yogurt shop. Okay, let's see where stuff's happening on the technology end. And I remember my father, the one who was so serious about. Let's hold on.
Michael, we can still hear you if you want to continue the
I'm coming
story.
back. I'm coming back.
Oh,
Okay,
oh,
but
you
this
are
isn't what
back.
we want video wise. This isn't what we want video wise. We're still doing it. And the thrilling conclusion of this story, oh no, the Canon is still doing the thing. Oh boy. Let's go back to maybe iPhone camera. That's not a good angle at all. That's a horrible angle.
We can work with
You're
this.
seeing right up my schnot hole. Let's see if I can make this better. Why is the camera not working? I'm gonna finish the story.
Finish the story,
I'm gonna
yeah.
try one other thing. And my dad found out. My dad, who was so serious about 9/11s, was like, "What happened with you and Brittany?" And I tell my dad, I had to break up with her, and he has a look on his face that's like, "You broke up with who, son?" Because he wasn't an idiot. He saw what was going on. Like, I don't know, Dad. She wanted to have sex, and I just don't know if that was the right thing to do as a budding Christian. To paint a picture as well, guys, my dad was like, "Oh no, is the video doing the thing again?"
There appears to be some delay between
Oh
your
my
voice
God.
and the video, yes.
Wonder
Let's.
what will happen if I do this camera. I'm just going back and forth between horrible cameras. How is it? Is it synced to now? This is horrible.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is the
still
worst day
getting
of my life.
lag on the cameras. I don't know what settings were
Okay,
changed.
let's go back to. Okay, let's go back to this.
Back to
And
phone
move
confessional.
around the room. Now I can move around the room to try to fix problems as I tell the story. For anyone who's still watching, I just want you to know that I appreciate you. This, you know, sucks ass. I'm gonna restart the entire laptop situation over there. I'm also gonna turn this here camera on and off. I'll let you see. I'm really gonna let everyone behind the
Here's
crack
some,
right.
yeah, behind the crack, you get to see our studio space. You get to see the gear Michael uses when we record those wonderful essays.
Yeah. Let's take a tour, guys.
What'd your dad say, though?
Well, my dad said, "Oh, I'll show you guys the new set." So my dad, I was with a friend too. My friend Philip was there. And my dad looks and he laughs and he says, "Son, you're going to be kicking yourself in the ass about that one for the rest of your life." Friends, Thomas Emmett Burns, rest in peace, was not wrong. And I say the main takeaway from this is one, don't let an international terror operation get in the way of you and young love. I'd say two, if you're of an age where you are in a committed relationship and you feel like you know what you want and you're being kind and loving, don't let Jesus get in the way of that. So I would say the two main things that got in the way of my love life as a teenager was an international terror organization and an evangelical interpretation of Jesus Christ. Now, am I saying that for me, there's a moral equivalence between Osama bin Laden and evangelical Jesus? Yes. It's 100% what I'm saying. But let us know in the chat what your experience was like that day. I'm going to show you guys something real quick while we do this tour. Let me see if I can switch the camera around. Watch this, guys. This is the first ever preview of the new set for our new channel that's launching. You are the first people seeing this. I think some of my colleagues are going to be mad that I did this. This is what it looks like. I think it's pretty cool, if I'm honest. So you can imagine a world where you're watching a video and I'm just kind of hanging out right here, talking about flicks and stuff like that. So that's the thing. We're gonna go to the other room now and see if we can make it work again. Thank you for everyone who's hanging out for this. I mean, you could say that for us, this is our 9/11 thus far. Is that weird to say? Is that disrespectful? I don't know. Okay. So let's see, guys. We're gonna start with this. We're gonna start by seeing if I can log into this computer again. So we're trying to log into the computer. There we go. You would
And we
just
got
think that,
666. Wow.
wow. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for still feeling the satanic energy even while nothing works. Who's using Google Chrome? It's me, Michael. Sorry for my Italian voice. I think it's important to always remember if I do Italian racism, it's allowed because I'm like an eighth Italian or something like that. So I can do it. Okay. So now we're gonna do. I'll show you that. Here's the laptop we're working on. I guess I could just turn the camera around. Now we're gonna work on getting our Canon back on. Okay. Camera control is limited. Okay. We had disconnect USB to restore control. Okay. Sorry that you got a little bit in the chest hair right there. Um, Speaking of chest hair, I had chest hair when I was very young, and that didn't help me in the dating game. Okay, so I'm right now, just to give you a heads up, Henry, I'm going to attempt to get back on Discord via
Chat, get ready. I'm prepared. Michael, we're
the
here with
computer.
you. We support you. This is very
Okay.
human.
It's not. We should just be doing better than this. I feel like Dick Cheney right now. Because Dick Cheney knew it was coming and he didn't stop it. Also, what the fuck? We're now is like, Democrats are just like Dick Cheney's our guy. We'll talk about this. Let's see.
Oh no, the Pentagon got him.
Okay. We're turning on a camera.
You're
Let's see what
back.
happens. Let's see. Okay.
You're sounding
So this is
good.
not,
You're
that's not
looking
the camera we want, but this isn't the camera we want. This isn't the camera we want. How are we doing? Am I here? Am I
you're
here? Am I
looking
here? Am I
good.
here? Am I
You're
here? Am I
looking
here? Am I here?
sinks. I'm going
We
to
did it.
readjust on my end, but I think technically you're all set.
Okay, we did it, guys. We might go long today because of what's been happening. Thank you so much for everyone who hung out through all this, who saw it. Someone said it's not hard to talk about the debate. Hurry up. Shut up. You shut your fucking mouth. I'm kidding, Slit Fries. You don't know what it's like on my end, okay? I'm having some struggles over here. Um, I'm gonna tweet that the stream had started. I'll do some other stuff. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Split Fries, for keeping me honest after some mega technical difficulties. Okay.
And if you want to reach out and give Michael any more comments in long form that don't fit in the chat, I threw the email up on the screen. As always, wisecracklive666 at
Yeah.
gmail.com. We will be looking at emails later today.
Yeah. And I just want to know, like, if you, if you do have criticisms, that's totally awesome. But give me your criticism and then put in the comments what your job is, where it's at, what hours you work, because then I'm going to come to your job and give you some tips as well. Is that fair? I think that's fair. I think if you can tell me how to do my job, I can come tell you how to do yours. I got like one more thing to do, y'all, and then we're really going to get cooking here.
700 people here with us. Thank you for
Wow,
joining.
700. I think what we're going to do, though, I'm going to be honest with you guys. We have some comments. I think I want to save those because I think we should probably just get into it at this point. You presumably came here because you thought we were maybe going to talk about the debate. I want to read your comments because I think you guys are great. Oh my God, why did it just do this? Just do what I want you to do, computer? I hate technology. Don't you ever think? Speaking of my dad, who I was talking about before, he like really thought the internet was going to be a fad. There's a time where I remember being young and being like, should you like invest money in some of this stuff? And he was just like, no, it's gonna be a fad. Trust me. No one wants to sit around on a computer all day. And he's dead and the internet's alive. So I think that's how we know who won. Shout out in the chat as well to anyone who has a dead dad or dead parent. It happens to all of us, but I'm glad you're holding it together. So we'll talk about the debate. Do you know, is the full version we have, is it like the ABC one?
It's from like the print. It's a C-SPAN rip.
Okay, cool. Because I think we're like allowed to what I mean, watch the thing.
Yeah,
But that's
it is news. It is public information. I know sometimes if we show like narrative content from ABC or something that's a
yeah.
bit more opinionated.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal. We're formally starting the show now. This is Wisecrack Live. Thank you so much for being here. I'll tell you what I wish I had right now, and this is not a joke. It's not a joke. I wish I would have made another cup of Yes Please coffee and brought it with me. On mornings where it's going well, I make a cup of coffee. I bring it with me. I don't have a coffee set up in the office. I could use some right now. Yes Please coffee. Some of the best coffee I've ever had in my life. That's not an exaggeration. I'm a nerd about coffee. I would never lie to you about it. I would never, ever lie to you about it. I'd lie to you about a lot. I wouldn't lie to you about coffee. And they are our official coffee partner. If you were interested in checking out Yes Please Coffee, I encourage you to do so. You get 20% off when you say Wisecrack out loud 3 times. Just don't say Beetlejuice 3 times. But you go to the website. There's a link. They're a great company, great people. We're going to start the giveaway soon. I should have started it today, but I'm behind on everything. Please check out Yes Please Coffee. I'll talk about it more later. We're going to talk about the debate later in the show. We're going to have Chris Bell on to talk about his new movie, Failed State, which is currently having a limited release at a theater in Brooklyn. I forget which one, but he'll tell us about that sort of stuff. We want to talk about the debate. And again, we're not here to be, a fill-in for Rachel Maddow or Matt Lauer or whoever else, does not Matt Lauer. He was a bad guy. Lawrence O'Donnell, these people of that nature. But I think I am interested in sort of what we can learn, what we can get at with this debate. And I will say, for me at least, and I've not watched the whole thing yet, we'll watch some now. For me, it's the spectacle of it all. And realizing this is not a original take from me, but I do think this debate and the current election is really laying bare how much of American political life and political life in the West or the world in general is just a spectacle, how much the things that are said are reflecting the vapidity of online discourse, which just appeals to these like base animal brain in-group, out-group instincts, the way in which so much of our political culture is, in a sense, pure ideology, devoid of any real, I guess, like conceptual structure or discussion, devoid of, real material accounts of these sorts of things. I think that what I mean by that, if you're like, what are you doing, man? You took so long to get going and now you're just spouting stuff out your mouth. But I think that when we're looking at politics, right, we can look at it through the level of like vibes. How do these people make me feel? We could look at it from the level of like ideas. What are they saying? What is the content or the value of those things? What are their policies? Neither of these people have policies, to be clear. And we can try to do a sort of materialist analysis, both in terms of the material conditions motivating and facilitating these elections, the campaigns, and what we see as the potential material outcomes of 2 different takes on American governance. And so, we're not here to do like policy stuff, but kind of to talk about what a debate like this and what our election season in general is saying about our culture, not just our like political culture, but our culture in general. For anyone who's saying, I hate when woke crack talks politics. First of all, shut your mouth. Second of all, I'm kidding, I love you. Third of all, important to remember that when we're thinking philosophically, we're thinking about the conditions that structure our understanding of the world, that structure our ethical and moral values that then shape the world that we live in. Our political structures are often a sort of direct reflection of those values or the values of those in power, right? So all of this aligns very well with doing philosophical analysis. If you don't agree with me, then you also think Plato and Aristotle are wrong. You're allowed to think Plato and Aristotle are wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's a wild take, you know? It's a take akin to you being like Yellow Wolf is the best rapper of all time. If you want to say that, if you want to be like Yellow Wolf and Machine Gun Kelly are the two best rappers of all time, you can have that take. It's a tough take to defend. The same way that you saying Plato and Aristotle are dumb and wrong. You know, they're not right about everything, but that would be a tough take to defend. So let's watch some of this debate. We'll talk about it. I think there's some good stuff early on. We'll see how the speed feels. Maybe we can hit a 1.25.
Yeah, let's see what 1.5 feels like.
Yeah, let's start with a 1.5. Where do we do that? Playback speed 1.5. Okay, guys, tuck in. Let's go. And this stream is sponsored by My Pillow. Go to mypillow.com/wisecrack to have Mike Lindell come to your house and smother you to death.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a debate. Thank you.
Kamala Harris.
Thank you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's too much. That was so. We'll do 1.25. I love that she introduces herself and then says, "Have fun."
Both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent.
I said you and President Trump. Do your job well.
And your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
Vibe check for the Americans in the chat. Do you feel better off than you did 4 years ago?
And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the
True.
cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
True.
We know that young families need support to
True.
raise their children, and I
Very
intend
much.
on extending a tax cut for those families of $6.
Speaking of young children that need childcare, I'm saying too much right now, but we had a babysitter fill in for us recently who's also kind of a social media star. And I checked their Twitter account, and they have a very popular Twitter account. I guarantee you some of you follow this person. Like, I guarantee you. Actually, I'm pretty sure Henry does follow this person because I looked at who our mutuals were. There's a lot of them.
Oh,
I'll tell you
damn.
I'll tell you off show, Henry. And since they babysat my daughter, I've occasionally checked their Twitter to see if there's any references to her. And she, they, her, him, them, who knows, did a tweet yesterday that referenced my daughter, and I don't know how to feel about it.
$6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
All that shit is so
My
expensive.
passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction
I do wonder if people in other countries are obsessed with small businesses the way we are.
to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do
I still think that idea, like, I get that that's an articulated policy, the tax credit to start small businesses. I just don't think that at a material level, what most people want from the government is like a tax credit if you start a small business. Because think about all of the things you would need to get to the point where that would even help you. You'd have to have like a business structure in place. You'd have to have the ability to take care of a lot of legal aspects. Maybe you need like real estate to start your business. There's so many things that go into that, of course, if you're already going to start a small business, great. But I think there's this fetishization of being your own boss and owning your own business in America. And in the chat, I'm genuinely curious for the non-Americans. Is this something that you're as obsessed with if you're in the Netherlands or Brazil or Taiwan or wherever you are? Because then it's like not a universalist policy. It's a particular policy that appeals to the certain desire in the American unconscious that is to be our own boss or own our own business. And I do wonder for most Americans, and I don't know if I'm, the average American here, if they would rather hear about things that benefit people who want to own their own business, which even if you have a tax credit, owning your own business is taking on a ton of risk, or if they would rather hear things like, we're going to have guaranteed healthcare, we're going to have tax cuts for the middle and working classes. We're going to have universal basic income or government benefits when you're not working. I don't know. That's how I feel about this.
Do what he has done, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations,
Okay,
which
Brazil
will result
too.
in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month.
Wait, are we getting to the dome zone?
We just beat. Yeah, we're in the dome zone. 1002.
God damn it! I was so rushed today. I
Economists have
trimmed my
said that
beard,
Trump
but I
sales
didn't shave. So I guess we got to get a little bit of dome for the children out there.
Gotta show.
It's tough dome though. It's tough dome right now. It's not like my best dome look. So apologies. I did some beard trimming. I didn't do a full dome trim today. But there you go, you sick freaks. I hope Drift King is here because I feel like Drift King has been acting for dome. There he is. Drift King has been wanting that dome. He's been wanting. Tasha Geeks says, give us that raw dome. For anyone who's just here and wonders what's happening, we have a thing where if we had 1,000 concurrent viewers, I show raw dome, which is the top of lay head. Yako cannot handle it. We got professor level dome. Dome is for the children. Dirty doming. Zaddy. Little dome fuzz. We do have a little dome fuzz. Bald. Someone said. So there you go. The light reflecting off the dome. I hope it doesn't blind you. Well, we'll give you a little dome for a little bit, but I want you to be distracted because the important thing here is politics. Straight to the dome. Dome shot.
tax would actually, for middle-class families, in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Just why can't we
First
just
of all, I have no
tax the shit
sales
of billionaires?
tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China.
Correct me if I'm wrong. People that understand economics more than I do. If we tax the goods from other countries, even if we make money off those taxes, won't it then just come back to get us because the price of those goods will go up? Because if those countries are getting taxed more, they're going to charge us more. I'm not a genius here, but
In fact, took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 20.
he really makes a meal out of the word probably. And I think what Trump's rhetorical strategy teaches you, if you just preface anything with probably, you can kind of get away with anything.
1%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're
Insane asylums is definitely the parlance we use in the year of our Lord 2024. I like where I paused it because the look that she's giving him is fantastic. If you didn't watch our most recent video, or our second most recent video, it is on border policy and immigration, and we actually get into some good stuff there. We won't get into it now because that video exists. It was written by John Duncan from the channel John the Duncan. He's a real legend in his field. But yeah.
Coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States.
How are you? Okay.
You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently.
I mean, here, if we're going to do less of a political analysis and more of an ideological thing, like what are we doing here, right? It's tapping into the sphere of the other. Go back to Freud in, I think, Civilization and Its Discontents. So Freud talks about how civilizations form. And civilization often involves groups of people getting together and not having violence being the primary mediating factor of their relations, right? When we think about what civilization means, it's like people are able to exist in some sort of political formation It's not just if I disagree with you, I beat you in the head with a rock or something like that. But one of the points that Freud makes, I'm being reductive here, by the way. It's a pretty accessible book if you want to read Civilization and Its Discontent. I think it's a great book. Makes this point that at the heart of every civilization that's like, we're good, we don't do the bad stuff, we're the smart guys who vote or whatever. Shouts to Taj Mowry. We at the heart of those civilizations is a violence, a repressed violence, and that repressed violence has to find an outlet, and the outlet for that violence is the other. So think about it here. We have a group logic. It's like we are this civilization, and we define ourselves in relationship, sort of in oppositional relationship to that other. And because the other is not like us, all of our violence, our hatred, our vitriol, our drive towards dehumanization is aimed towards that other. And there's always a figure of the other, and in America in recent life, whether it's the immigrant, the Arab, for some people it becomes, the trans individual, all these sorts of things. It's just an ideological construct that allows people to aim a kind of repressed anxiety, fear, and anger at a magical other. And often that other, doesn't exist, right? There are immigrants in the world, but that group of individuals is totally different than this ideological construct that we're hearing about in this sense. And, they know that that's the purpose of it, right? It's to freak people out and make them feel like their civilization is at threat from this other. And that's why we talked about this with the Charlie Kirk stream on Monday. Shout to our bud Naima. When we hear people talk about the West, Western civilization, I mean, that's what they're kind of doing. They're saying we're in this circle, they're outside the circle, and they want to come tear the circle down. And that's what is going on here.
These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what
This is a hot take. I said this to my wife last night, and she said I was wrong. I'm just kind of over hearing about January 6th. I just am, especially on a day like September 11th. I don't want to hear about January 6th.
we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight.
And so, in a sense, like, he's appealing to this fear-based, I guess, borderline jingoism in which there's the other, and the other wants to destroy your life, to destroy your civilization, to take down white Christian society. I think in a sense it seems like Harris is appealing to, when she says the aspirations of Americans, I think in a sense she's operating via this other ideological construct in which all Americans aspire to be small business owner, millionaire business people. And I do think there's a sense in which, like, it's still operating, like, that side of things, operating under the sort of neo-liberal fantasy in which all we want to do is be good boys and girls relative to the market. And I think sometimes that ignores that. I don't know. I think for most people, again, I'm talking to my ass a little bit here. I think for most people, they're just like, I don't know, man. I just want to, like, pay my rent, live someplace that is chill, have time to do things I want to do, have the resources to have a family if I want to have a family, have access to healthcare when I need it. And I think that there's a way in which they skirt beyond that by appealing to this fantasy. And it makes me think of, and I'll get this wrong, Henry will know this right, or someone in the chat will know this right. Isn't there the old adage that, like, every American thinks...
Is it the temporarily displaced millionaire line?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing I really want to know is when they use the term middle class, what specific income brackets are they talking about there? At what point are you too poor to fall into that bracket? And what does that signify about people who don't make enough money? Like, where's the care being allocated?
Yeah, and I think too, often when class is discussed in this sense, it's very unclear if there's a real economic or material correlate for what that means. I think often when they say middle class, I feel like they're just referring to like people that probably went to college and can afford to shop at like Trader Joe's or something.
Tonight, from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
I feel like the Project 2025 thing is getting diminishing returns.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917 where 100.
They just never use metrics for anything. Like, I just feel like if you're going to say, I mean, it makes me think of, when I was off on vacation last week, there was the Trump and Harris interview on CNN. And there was some point where Harris was giving some answer.
I think you mean Harris Walls, just to
Harris
clarify.
Walls. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I'm a classic David Muir type, or whatever the host name is. But there was some question about policy and families, and Harris said a lot of stuff she's been saying, and they let Walls talk for a second. And Walls was like, yeah, we did this in Minnesota. It cut child poverty by this percentage. It had this effect. And it made me, I was like, oh yeah, that's what we should be hearing. And on both sides, if you're going to say that the economy is great, tell us why.
100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns. We got masks. We did things that nobody thought possible.
And the
people
best
give me
gowns.
credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit, but I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
And when I think about who has the interest of working people in America close to their heart, I think of Goldman Sachs. When I think of a group of people in a room in Manhattan, really concerned about working Americans, about single mothers, about children in tough cities, I think Goldman Sachs cares about them. I think this is crazy. I'm going to be very honest with you. I think this is crazy that Goldman Sachs becomes who we trust to decide what policy is better, because we know that with Goldman Sachs, their concern is the market and shareholders and investors. All of the things that drive their motives are the material and economic concerns of the richest people in America. No one at Goldman Sachs gives a flying just enough money in the economy that people don't riot and that they can still consume. It is what it is. But this is, and I think I'm probably salty about this as well, because as I'm sure she'll bring up, the Democrats are also touting that Dick Cheney loves them now. Dick Cheney, who, I won't go down the rabbit hole. Google Dick Cheney plus Iraqi civilians.
What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates.
Yeah, someone in the chat says she's saying that even the business schools think that Trump's wrong. And you're totally right. And I think, in a sense, that's a good rhetorical strategy. I don't know. I just don't love that the whole strategy here is, and again, in terms of campaign strategy, it's probably the best thing, right? The best thing to do is probably to simply show why he is bad. But I would also like to hear how you're good.
Described economic plan as something that would increase inflation next year, would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Feels fair.
Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just.
Can we all just acknowledge that sometimes he's funny? Can we just do that? Can we just do that and not feel bad about it? That's what I'm asking you. Just asking you.
That are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You
haven't yet, please do like the stream. It helps us a lot. Vote for stream. And shout out to, is Pizza Boy still Lord of the Chat? I think you are.
Yes, Pizza Boy is still Lord.
Shout out to our Lord of the Chat. If you want to be Lord of the Chat, gift memberships. It's a fun thing to do. Also, if you feel like you really need your voice heard and you want me to shut the hell up, you can super chat if you want.
Recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a word.
Does anyone understand inflation well in the chat? You know, maybe come on and talk about it. I'm not, not the biggest. Okay, people are very excited about someone in the chat who said something. Unban said, the debate was for people who want to hear things like Goldman Sachs, Wharton School, Israel, not the ones who are concerned about egg prices. I think that sounds probably pretty accurate.
Speaking of eggs, something that I didn't hear addressed when I watched was there have been a huge amount of recalls on various grocery items and household goods due to deregulation that took place in, the 2017-2018 era. And I'm very curious as to why those things don't get mentioned or talked about as something to undo or reverse the clock on.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like we live in an era where more and more, like, just eating food from places is like putting your life at risk. Everything feels bad. It's almost like we live in a failed state. Speaking of that, stick around, because later in the show, we're going to talk to Chris Bell, one of the creators of a new film Harry and I have both watched. It's playing at some festivals. If you are in the New York area, it's playing right now. It's called Failed State. September 11th. Wisecrack Live. We've had a fun adventure on this show. We are currently checking out the debate. We'll keep doing that. Like the stream if you haven't. And we're in the Raw Dome zone because we're over 1,000 concurrent viewers. If we get to 2,000, I don't know what that means. I'll say this. If we get to 2,000, I'll do something. We can vote on it. I'll go shirtless, Fuck it. If you ever thought,
be very careful what you promise right now.
If you ever thought, could someone's physical form make my penis retract back into my body such that it doesn't exist? Let's get to 2,000. I would say it's whatever the opposite of sexual is what it would look like to see me without a shirt on, Whatever the opposite feeling of lust is what you would experience.
Worst period of time, people can't go out and buy
But
cereal
I love
or
myself,
bacon
though.
or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out.
How would Lay's chips help you make them? Oh,
When a policy about China should
That was
be
dumb, I know.
in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know.
I do think there's just something here too that and this happens, both candidates do this. These discussions of like polls and what so-and-so tweeted. Also, it's so funny that Elon changed the thing and everyone still calls them tweets, no matter what Elon does. Also, if you looked at Twitter last night, Elon Musk said something incredibly creepy about Taylor Swift, something that he should definitely go to jail for.
That she was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of
Taiwan.
philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And
What's
it
his
will
philosophy?
be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist.
Let's go. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist.
Everybody
video.
knows.
We have a video on that you guys can check out. I mean, this is another thing. This is like a thing that people say. But, you ever think like if they're just going to call every Democrat a Marxist anyways, let's just run a Marxist or like a socialist. I think that was the interesting thing with Sanders is like, it kind of undercuts that criticism because you could have said to Sanders, like, he's a socialist. And he would be like, yes, I am. And here's what it means. It means healthcare for children. It means, he would just be like, yeah, it just means you get to like chill and do stuff. It is 9/11. Yes. So, but it's interesting that like, every election season, but this election season in general, that Marxism is part of the discourse, part of the parlance. But again, like, what do they mean when they say that? She adopted my philosophy. She's a Marxist. Shouts to that robot boy. And thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate you. Again, it's what Marxism is of course, this is going to sound stupid, but I'm a stupid guy who's a little bit smart. It's a system of economic analysis. It's a material analysis of the functioning of the economy and social relations under capitalism. So even to say, if you were to say that Harris is a Marxist, all you're saying is like she analyzes economics in a certain way. It's way less like ideologically committed. Someone, Lucas says, do you think Trump even knows what Marxism is? I don't, but I'm not going to pretend. Yeah, I definitely don't think he does. And this is a thing, I tweeted about on the Wisecrack account yesterday. It's always me there, about something Jordan Peterson said to my good friend and real fun filmmaker, Matt Walsh, about Marxism and postmodernism. It's just like, they don't know what it is. And it's not that hard to understand. It doesn't mean you have to like it. You can hate it, and that's fine. But they don't understand what it is. And I do think there's a thing that happens then where like a conservative politician in America calls a Democratic liberal politician a Marxist, and their response is normally something like, Marxist? I'm friends with Mr. Goldman Sachs himself. His golden sack is my sack. But it's just very funny to see this in a debate. And yeah, I think that Trump has no idea what Marxism is, which is wild too, because he went to an Ivy League school.
Her father, Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well.
I mean, true. Her father is a Marxist economist. The idea that if your dad did something that you did that thing is very is very silly, you know, like Michael Jordan's sons weren't that good at basketball. And then it's just historically true as well that she hasn't really had a great relationship with her dad. Sounds like he was kind of checked out a little bit. But yeah, there's nothing, and we talk about this in the video that came out a couple weeks ago. There's just not really anything in her track record you could look to say that it even veers near Marxism. If anyone can think of anything, please do let me know. But there's just no example. So her reaction there does make sense.
But when you look at what's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has.
And America just needs to decide, what is it? Which one is it? Is it the Statue of Liberty thing? Or is it like the closed borders thing? Let's just pick a team.
Destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words,
I think they get into this, but I'm pretty sure I was listening to some new stuff on my car ride on the way in. Pretty sure that's just like an untrue thing. Pretty sure that's not a thing that anyone ever said, that we would have the baby and then decide what we were going to do with it. It's weird. My chat is telling me that the chat just stopped. Are people still chatting? Did we all just stop? I'm going to reload my thing. I like to see what's being said. You know, I like to see.
Well, yeah, last chat I have is from 1D Forever. I haven't seen it
Yeah,
update
same.
since.
So weird. Do you all just get really quiet? That's cool. If you just want to focus, that's great as well. Thanks for being here.
we'll execute that. That's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay.
I don't think there's any universe where Tim Walz was like, I'm here with my daughter eating pumpkin donuts at the state fair, and we're going to go execute a baby. You know what I mean? Like, I just love the idea, too. It's so funny trying to radicalize Tim Walz, who is the most just like guy ever. He's just like a guy. Just truly just like a guy. He's just like a guy. He was a teacher. He has a wife. He has kids. He's just like a guy.
And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is...
And it's something I'll get into more later, but there's also like the obsession with the figure of the child. We talked about this on Monday with the Charlie Kirk scenario, the circle Kirk that happened when they were all kirking each other off. But there's obsession with the child, the unborn child. You know, it makes you think of like Lee Edelman's work, No Future. I'm sure some of you have seen that book or read a little bit of it, but it's this weird obsession you get on both sides in the American political discourse. And it seems to be a way of just like a coded way of talking about the perpetuation of things as they are and the continuation of power in a certain system. And like the child or the figure of the child represents the future of that particular system or something like that. Because clearly there is no real economic or material care about the health of women or the health of children in this country, because they're not discussing any other policy that relates to that. If we get to emails later, we either got a comment or an email that was someone basically saying like, hey, I'm actually a pro-life person, but for me that also means we should do all this other stuff. And yeah, again, I think there's the only consistent way to be obsessed with the life of children is to be obsessed with the life of children after they're born. Not an original take, again, but if we're going to operate at the level of like the material reality of the claims being made, we can simply say, if the claim is the life of children is absolutely invaluable, they're made in the image of God, these children, babies matter more than anything else, then go look at child tax credits, funding for childcare, funding for pre-K, paid maternity leave, paid family leave, access to healthcare for children, free school lunch programs, transfer, all these sorts of things. And then it's like, okay, so ideologically at the level of sort of spectacle, you're telling us one thing, but when we look at what's actually happening, we see a completely different thing. Which one's more real? I don't know. You decide.
Something, 52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did.
Wait, I want to know, when I try to do something in the chat, now it says error, try again.
Yeah, so OBS is telling me I'm connected, streaming. Everything looks good as far as our video connected to YouTube goes, but I'm not seeing any action on chat. I'm even seeing the concurrent viewers fluctuating and the likes going up. So people are watching, but I don't know what's going on with chat. Hang tight, I'll figure that out. But go ahead and keep watching.
Yeah, I just missed seeing you in the chat.
But also, of Republicans do exceptions. Very important. Get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican,
every single one,
liberal,
every
conservative,
person,
they all wanted
everyone,
this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting.
I'm just going to say, I know this is technically unrelated. We spend a lot of time on this sort of stuff, and it seems to be, in most cases, I'm always skeptical of polls, but a lot of the polls seem to indicate that most people in America are just like fine with a kind of modern take on abortion that's reflective of most of the rest of the world, in which abortion is a woman's decision and a matter of healthcare. You know, a lot of discussion about that. We're not going to watch the whole thing today, but from everything I've gathered, no real discussion of ye olde climate in this one. Some would say that's a pretty big issue that's going to affect the lives of lots of folks. Especially interesting that so obsessed with, I mean, Trump in this case in particular, so obsessed with immigration, although, Harris has been pretty tough on immigration as well. You know what's going to make immigration a lot worse? When tons of places become uninhabitable, and then we have climate migrants that are just trying to find places to live. Things are going well,
It may
guys.
take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn
Wow.
our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a
What Maverick is saying about Marx in the chat. We started teaching about Marx, started with everything about Marx. When your drunk uncle is wrong. Marxism doesn't work or not work. It simply is. You're going to learn what it is. I think that's very well put. I'm so glad the chat's back. Thank you for being here. Let's really attack the chat now. If you ever want to have fun with Marx, you can find Marx quotes that you can show someone and they'll be like, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds reasonable. And then you can be like, haha, Marx says that. Thank you.
national abortion?
Well, I won't have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just.
I mean, another issue in American electoral politics as well is that the pretty limited power of the executive office, unless you're willing to go for it. And recently, the right in America will go for it and use and abuse power as much as they want, whereas the Democrats have more of this line of like, we got to play by the rules, so nothing really gets done because of the way our system works.
Well, Joe did say he was doing 9/11 today, so if the president does it and it's official, it's within the power.
What a horrifying thing of him to say. Very disrespectful. Shout it out in the chat. Give us a fun emoji or something like that if you weren't born on 9/11.
Let's talk. When they said they're going to get student
You could do
loans
some funny
terminated,
ones.
and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the
There's
beach.
that
But
probably
look,
again.
Her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing
Wait,
about
did I
this
see
whole
in the
idea.
chat
And how
that
unfair that would have been.
Nathan Arnold was here? Because if so, I remember Nathan Arnold. He was a great student and a nice guy. Oh my God, yeah. Nathan, thank you so much. Sorry, that's fucking so cool. Nathan was such a great dude, and I hope you're doing really well. See, I really did used to teach. Nathan, seriously, shouts to you. Hope you're doing well. That's just awesome to hear from you. Thank you so much for popping in. I'm really glad I saw that. That makes me really happy. Makes me really happy to hear from cool former students. And I'm so old that Nathan's probably, well into his 60s now.
And part of the reason lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
It's deeply fucked up.
Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another
to.
lie.
He
I have
has
been
to.
a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The
He's been a leader on IVF, which is
IVF,
fertilization.
I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing,
He's been a leader on fertilization IVF. He's good at fertilizer too. I honestly think, yeah, a Vance and Walls debate will be way more fun than this. This is kind of depressing, to be honest.
you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
13th month,
Why don't you ask
27th
that
month.
Why
question?
don't you
That's
answer
the
10-year-olds?
question? Would you
Because
veto?
under
Can you
Roe
abort a
v. Wade,
10-year-old?
You
Would you
could,
veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at
I'm not trying to be silly here, guys. Wouldn't doing an abortion after birth just be killing a baby? Just more like a murder situation? Because it's just like I don't think that's a thing. That's not a thing, right? Like when I had a kid, my daughter came out and no one was like, "You good with this? Do you want to leave the room for a sec and we can just?" They didn't say that at our hospital. Honey, if it's the future and you're ever watching this, I love you so much, and I hope that joke didn't make you think at all that I take your life for granted or want to lose it. You're the best person I know.
the governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President
We put the baby aside.
turned out-
Like he makes it sound like we get the baby, they put the baby in a basket, they leave it in the basket for a little bit. There's a panel, they decide what to do with the baby. Sometimes they take it out of the basket, sometimes they throw the basket in a river. Moses, the Bible, heard of it?
To immigration and border security, we know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden
Yeah, I had
with
a
the root
kid.
causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a
I know I look too young to have a kid. I know, especially Raw Dome, you're like, wow. Should MTV make a show called Teen Dads featuring Michael?
record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations.
If you drink every time Kamala Harris says, I've prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, you're going to die.
For the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes.
If you've not watched it, again, I do recommend checking out our latest video. It's on immigration, border policy. It's written by John Duncan. Guy's a PhD in international relations, political theory, so knows what he's talking about. Kind of gets at the idea that really both sides of this one lean a little fascistic when it comes to border policy.
At a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies.
Okay, so this pivot is rhetorically really interesting right here. So I didn't mean to catch her with that little wink on her face. But she was asked a question on immigration right there that was pushing against her and Biden's border policy in terms of only acting recently. And she does this really good pivot right now to bring up his rallies, which clearly has nothing to do with this question. And it really gets him going. And that was, this has been said enough that the policy for Harris and the Democrats for this or the sort of strategy was to have a bunch of ways to knock Trump off his game and distract him, like he's a little cat and they put a little toy in front of him. And this is one of the toys.
You will see during the course of his characters like Hannibal Lecter, he will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask.
I also want to ask this. We're not going to get through the whole debate on the stream unless we stick around for a while. Do people want that? I'm going to ask this genuinely. We always kind of keep this to around 2 hours. Do people want us to stream longer? Like, would you want to see us just really go through this whole thing? I'm genuinely curious.
Get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. And
I want to get
then
paid.
showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our
Most
country
incredible
is being
rallies in the
lost.
history
We're a
of
failing
politics.
nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And
I'm not being silly when I said this. He's saying all of this. People got shot to death at one of his rallies.
what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield.
Okay, so this is real fucked up. We're about to see what some might call a blood libel against Haitian immigrants in America. So we'll just say, shouts to Haitians. If anyone from Haiti or of Haitian descent is watching this, sorry that you have to hear this shit. It really sucks. It's not good. Very dark. It's pretty clear that Haitians you're not eating people's pets in Ohio. That's not a thing. But this is where we're at. It's 2024, and we have these debates, and there's no real discussion of substantial policy that would actually affect the lives of working people. But we do have time to talk about conspiracy theories started by psychopaths in which we imagine, and again, get back to what we talked about earlier, the other, the immigrant, the one who threatens our civilization, the scary Haitians eating our pets. Like, Jesus Christ. But let's see what he says.
They're dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I
You should have to fight Wyclef for saying that.
say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager.
This is a really fun fact check.
There, he told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and
people on
used
television
for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've
We'll find out.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Guys, we don't do politics here or whatever, but Dick Cheney's a war criminal. I'm just going to say it. It's pretty true. I think this is really weird. I mean, think about it this way. The Democrats in America right now are more concerned. Oh, no. Oh, no.
We're back to laggy, Michael, but audio's
Okay,
still
let's give it
good.
a second.
Let's
Can you
give
hear
this
me
a-
still?
Yeah, you're still here if you want to
Okay.
talk through it.
I'm doing the classic off and back on again strategy. Oh, I'm so upset. Guys, I am so upset. So upset. I wonder what will happen if we switch. I'm so sorry that you guys are having to deal with all this today. You know, it's a big day. Big stream. stream, lots going on, and is this lag? It's all lagging. We're gonna lag. Let's go high qual, and we'll see if it stops lagging. I'm sorry if this is confusing. We're just gonna watch the stream and see what happens.
And Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know
shouts to
the
Liz
inside
Cheney.
track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed,
I
think
asked
the
if he could
choice is
push
clear
back
in
to
this election.
11:45.
President Trump will give you.
What I want to kind of skip ahead for. Oh my God. This is horrible, guys. I just skipped ahead a little bit. We'll see.
Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
local
military.
Okay, talking about the border
You
again.
also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents.
Like, this is where we're at in 2024, that the Democratic candidate is criticizing Donald Trump, the Republican, for wanting to defund the police. We have fun, guys. We have fun. I promise I'm not faking the lag. I'm not faking lag. We can get to shirtless Michael. It's still in play. Like the stream. Thanks for being here. And just a quick shout out again. I'm not trying to be silly. Shout out to Yes Please. If you don't want to lag, drink Yes Please coffee. I'm not kidding. It's some of the best coffee I've ever had in my life. They partner with us on the streams. It's honestly a way, like, you liking the stream helps us. You commenting after the fact helps us. Obviously, super chats, memberships, they help us a lot. Crime is through the roof. Said that, Game Clown gets it. Being on our Patreon helps a lot. But I think if you're just a person who drinks coffee and you're like, I really like good coffee, I like Wisecrack, especially the streams, fuck it. You get 20% off. It's really good coffee. If you do get it, let us know what you think about it. Let's go back to learning about why we gotta keep funding the police.
Get this, the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must
Tell us the plan.
do to support our small businesses, address
Maybe she does say the plan later in the debate.
bringing down the price of groceries, But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again.
That's a weird
Understand,
ruling.
this is
I
someone
don't
who has
love it,
openly
that.
said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Jay-Z's not going to
Stop
stop him.
Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump,
Russia investigation
We have a lot to
that
get-
went
I almost
nowhere.
took
We have a
a
lot to get to,
bullet to
Lindsay.
the
Vice
dome.
President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign
So this-
says you don't.
I do
you supported
think that, like,
decriminalizing border crossings.
it's not
Now you're
letting me
taking a
pause
harder line.
anything.
I know you say
There
that
we
your
go.
values have not changed.
I think
So then why have
this
so
is
many-
crucial because, again, I think looking at the way in which Harris, I know my computer.
Yeah,
sucks.
you're coming
Guys,
through pretty
technology
broken up
sucks.
right now.
You know, I think the internet should. Oh, guys, I just wish we were back in endorphin port. This is horrible. I'm so pissed off. I'm so pissed off. Like the stream, guys, because the more people.
Is someone in
Is
your
someone
building
trying to
like
stop us?
using your network for anything by chance? Any downloading, uploading?
Oh, someone said they're. Did we miss a super chat? Someone said their super chat's almost gone. I'm sorry if we really missed something. Why doesn't Kamala skewer Trump? Doesn't Kamala skewer Trump? Everything's best or worst in history. Yeah, Pesky 716. I don't know if anyone can hear me right now. I don't know if I'm alive. Maybe this is death. Maybe. Okay, I was gonna say maybe I'm in hell. Oh God. Okay. Sorry, but I totally get what you're saying, Pesky, about that, and I do think. It's just there's not a lot of real like interaction, right? In this debate, it's not a ton of going back and forth. It's the person saying the stuff they think they should say. We'll watch a few seconds of this in a few minutes, guys. Chris Bell or Christopher Bell. I'm gonna ask Chris or Christopher which is the preferred name here. It's gonna come on and talk about his movie Failed State, a movie Henry and I have watched. It's playing in some theaters, and it really, I'm being dead serious, relates to a lot of this. So we'll talk to Chris, and maybe if Henry's up for it, I'm up for it, we'll stick around and we'll watch some more of the debate. So we're going to take a debate break and talk to Chris about his movie, and then we'll come back and do some more debate.
You said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policies?
Because here's why our values haven't changed, guys. The value is the acquisition of political power. I'm not even saying this in a judgmental way. The values here aren't like, and I'm going to use this contrast, and maybe this is unfair, but I actually believed when Bernard Sanders ran for president that he wasn't running for the acquisition of political power, that he was running because he genuinely saw a little opening for him to have a chance to implement what we could call vaguely like democratic socialist policies. I believe that. And maybe I'm being naive, but I just think if we look at the track record of someone like Bernard Sanders' life, I don't see a lot of like desire for raw power. So, I say all that to say it's like there's a clear explanation for this. There was a point in 2020 when things in the Democratic Party were leaning way more, we won't even call it left, but like, vaguely democratic socialist or whatever. She wanted to win then. To win then, she said stuff to appeal to voters that were maybe excited about a Sanders or a Warren or whoever. Now, that isn't the path to getting power. So she does not hold those policies anymore. So when she says her values haven't changed, she's not lying, because her values have nothing to do with the planet or decriminalizing immigration or ending gun violence in America. It has to do with saying what needs to be said to acquire power. Now, you might say, and this is also true, you might say, well, Michael, at a material level, if Kamala Harris does acquire power, then certain conditions will absolutely be better, especially for certain vulnerable groups of people in America, than under Donald Trump. And that is absolutely correct. I'm not going to say that's wrong, but I think it's secondary to the power thing.
Policy position.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction
Fracking's
Act,
maybe not
which
the best.
opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil.
Okay, guys, we're going to get back to this. I'm telling you this, I'm hatting up for a sec. If we keep it to 1,000, I'll take it off again. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk to Chris about his movie, Failed State. Okay? So I think Chris is in the waiting room. I'm kidding you. I love.
I can hear you.
Guys, we're having fun today. I would say today our technology is going great. We have the best technology. Everyone says world leaders, leaders of Hungary, leaders of Hong Kong, Russian leaders, they say we have the greatest technology in the whole world. Everyone, while we're waiting, I'm very curious. Like, I don't know, what are people's takeaways from this debate? Because I asked last night, I was at a baseball game during the debate and asked on Twitter how it was going because I wasn't watching it. And it was a really interesting range of responses, with some people saying, like, I don't want to be around anymore, and other people saying, oh, it's actually not so bad. So I'm curious what you guys thought about that. I know you've been sharing throughout, but now I'm kind of looking at the chat more than I was. Again, we're getting our tech back, and I'm being dead serious. I really want you guys to hear about this movie because I think you will like it a lot. Are we getting DDoSed? I don't know.
Are we?
Or how about this?
I can play the trailer for a moment while we get everything sorted.
Yeah, let's watch the trailer for Failed State. You guys are going to dig this. Dead serious. You're going to fucking dig this. Just please stick around. I know sometimes with interviews you guys run away, but stick around. But you're playing it in a way where I'm not going to see it, right? You're just doing it on your end? Cool. Check my email and make sure things are okay. Chris, give me
The genie comes down and is like, what do you want, Dale? You can have it. Have at it.
Like 3 wishes?
3 wishes.
First one, probably have enough money that I don't have to work anymore.
You give it that.
I travel all over the place. I know people look at the bag and they think homeless. Second one is to invest. Invest in like companies, like you say.
I think it would be nice to talk about something else.
You know, I agree with you.
You know what I mean?
Okay, sure.
I mean, we got a long ride.
Nobody's telling me what happened. You don't know?
Okay. Yeah, this is
I
hard.
know I know it's confusing. And my third wish, this might be a little bit sentimental. Well, that my mom was still here.
Really?
Yeah, because she passed 5 years ago, and I miss her to this day.
All right, y'all just watched the trailer for Failed State. I'm going to be bringing Michael and Chris back into the room. Michael, are you
Yes, I am
there?
here. I'm here.
Okay, we just watched the trailer. Chris, I just brought you into the room. We have watched the trailer.
Hello.
Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Amazing. And wait, just to confirm, Chris or Christopher?
Chris.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. We just watched the trailer to Failed State. I know Henry and I got to watch it. We have some questions about it. Let's start with this, just so everyone here. I know we have some audience in New York for sure. Where's the movie playing right now? I know this is something that one would normally say at the end of an interview, but I want to make sure we get this out there. So, if where can people see this film in the coming days, weeks, if they're in the right places?
Okay, so New York, it opens at Spectacle Theater in Williamsburg on South 3rd, and that is Friday through Thursday.
Awesome.
And if you're in Washington, it's playing at Tacoma Film Festival in October. Forget the dates on that, but
Awesome.
yeah, that's what we got so far.
Okay, well now I'll jump back. First question: What like precipitated the making of this movie? What sort of? I know that your first. I don't know if it was your first project. The big thing you've done before that I've seen that I know was on Means TV was the George Bush project. Miss Me Yet, right? I'm getting the title right. Great day to watch that too, guys. If you haven't seen it yet on September 11th, great day to watch that project. What led to the making of Failed State, and then what's been your relationship, and maybe this can be a two-part question, to like documentary versus narrative filmmaking in your previous work?
Yeah. Okay, so Miss Me Yet definitely hits different today. I cannot not say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Failed State is a feature version of this short I did called Trammel, kind of. It's pretty similar, where I'm working with someone I've known for over 10 years named Dale, and he's a messenger in real life, and we kind of built a
Okay, that's what I was
story
wondering.
around him. Yeah, so originally I was going to do a different feature, and then COVID happened, lockdown happened, and that all went up. Um, so in the meantime, Dale was still delivering, and my DP and co-director on this project, Mitch, was still going out and shooting because he's a DP for work and had nothing else to do. So we figured out a way very early on to just, travel and follow around Dale. And as things started to open up more and vaccines and such were available, we were able to shoot a lot more. And through the initial documentary footage, we kind of wrote out a story, and it's this blend of fiction and nonfiction, and it's kind of varying degrees in different ways. It's what I've done, I guess, my entire career thus far, and I guess will continue to do. It's something you kind of have to do on a micro budget scale,
Mhm.
but I do find it interesting. It's a way of working. I believe they have this term in music. I don't hear it elsewhere, but it's called like aleatory,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
you're basically taking. I think the gist of it is you're taking what you have and kind of constructing art based off of that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I think that's a good description of most of the stuff I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've read a solid amount about the movie before watching it. And it does kind of mess with your brain because I feel like we often have these lenses that we take to a project. Like this is a documentary, this is a narrative fictional piece, and the way you shot this, the way it looks, the way people interact, like uses both parts of your brains. For me at least, like you're switching between those lenses watching it. It's really interesting to know that Dale is someone you know and who really is a messenger because the performance is, I guess if performance is the right word to use in this case, is pretty amazing and compelling. And I think like really, I don't know, pathos filled. Um, Wondering, and I know Henry has some questions too, and I want to let him jump in. What what were you aiming at, I guess, at the level of the ideas or feelings you wanted to communicate in Failed State?
Um, one of the primary ones would be just labor in general,
Hmm.
working your job, and in particular one which has essentially become, I want to say most, but a lot of what this country traffics in would be the service industry,
Hmm.
and all that entails, which is like, you're working your body down. People do kind of um, look down on that kind of work, and there's a lot of care work involved depending on like what type of service you do. If you're a cashier or whatever, like you can be listening to somebody's problems because they're lonely, because all of our institutions and community centers are pretty much gone at this point in our lives. Um, but what I also wanted to do is show that when someone is overworked and kind of, it basically becomes their own life, the way that they tend to seek out community,
Hmm.
um, which is good and bad, because you don't want to be working all the time, which is what Dale does, but he's able to carve out these social interactions with a coworker or someone he runs into, and they're not always good interactions. Sometimes they're angry and upsetting, and that is just what happens when you're kind of pushed to the edge. But that is something I wanted to do. It's just like little community that is being formed. You can't eliminate it. It's always going to be there, and that's something that I find pretty beautiful. It's the
Yeah.
same as like you're in an office. You're talking to your coworkers, and that could be a point of, hey, let's start organizing, or it could just be um, friendly chatter, bonds forming, which can lead to other amazing things. And I wanted to put that out there and not be so dire about it. I was very depressed, doing this over COVID. So
I can
um,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
focusing
but
on just the interactions with people, social interactions.
I know you guys did a really great job in the movie of having characters discuss like material conditions and labor conditions in a way that still feels human. I think sometimes I've never made a, leftist piece of art, and I know something that in watching them or looking at people who make things with a level of social critique, it can be hard sometimes not to just have the character that like turns to the camera and says, "Now I'm going to explain to you like alienated labor." And I think the movie lets you feel the alienation of those characters, and I think especially you point out the service economy stuff. So many of us are also completely alienated from the human that shows up to drop the thing off, and I think we don't conceive of their life outside of that. And a couple of parts of the movie, like when you bring up the social thing, is it cool if I reference a couple of things that happen in the movie, or would you rather me not?
I'm going.
Okay, cool. I mean, a couple of the most devastating parts of it were, the scene where he runs into an old coworker who's been let go, and it's kind of just left hanging in a way that feels really, really sad and dark. And then the part where we think that there is going to be this organic social meetup at the McDonald's near JFK, and it falls apart. Like that felt like a knife going into my stomach when you see Dale on the escalator realizing he did all that for nothing, which felt very, very real as well. But it was a very, I don't know. I just it really draws you in and you feel a lot, which I think is important. I think sometimes what can be lacking in art that's aiming at some form of social critique is like a level of pathos or making you feel connected to the people that are involved in it. Henry, I want to give you space. Do you have any questions you wanted to jump in on for Chris?
Yeah, especially mentioning that it started, kind of documentary style following the subject, and then later, what additions or like at what point did you feel like the want to kind of like add the narrative touch, or what sort of narrative flourishes did you feel were needed in addition to like what you were collecting documentary style?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be a mix of two, and it's kind of just like within each scene, it's like a
Okay.
concoction where it's like, oh, 20%, a little documentary here, a little
Yeah.
fiction here. And it's basically um trying to figure out like dialogue was sometimes written, but a lot of time, especially with Dale, I would give him a topic
Hmm.
and it would be the actors chatting about, like, for instance, at the cemetery, he meets a young woman, and I was working with her, being like, "Who would you be visiting right now?" And she said her grandpa, and it's like, "Oh, how can this like be brought up?" And then Dale can bring up his past job,
Yeah.
and Dale's very open. He's very willing and wants to talk about his mom and all of this stuff. Um, so we incorporate all of those things, and I guess it's hard to figure out. I guess when things need to have more of an arc and you can play in your little sandbox for a while, but you need the little narrative arc. That's when you start kind of like um fictionalizing things or putting your hand more on that scale.
Okay.
And there's instances of, I mean, even just like Dale can say whatever he wants, but I need to tell him where to go, like blocking.
Hmm.
Right.
So like blocking, or even just like doing it for emotional beats where Dale would immediately like, if he's having an interaction with someone and it's supposed to be sad, Dale will immediately talk. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You have to like look away for a second,
Hmm.
do that. So it's this constant like kind of how do we form this into kind of movie that is unique but still plays um in some ways with kind of traditional dramatic stuff.
Yeah, I think it works
Um
really well in that respect too. Something I also noticed is I believe you only had one gaffer. The credits were very small on this. I was kind of curious technically, like how big a crew you were running with, or what was the most complicated aspect as far as like shooting and production wise. Uh, yeah.
so Mitch was the DP and co-director, and he did a lot. He did most. And normally on set or just running around, he would have one person helping, and that's it. And I guess the most complicated would have been the end part in the school building,
Hmm.
which is when we had a gaffer and a gaffer. We had two gaffers. I forget how they're credited, but we had two people, and I believe we also had an AC. It was like our biggest day. Um, but then we also had Dale and Melissa was there as well. Um, that's as big as it got, I think. Me and Mitt, there was like 6 or 7 of us. Yeah, this was like super lean to do, and we normally kind of really scale down for stuff like this. Again, we're not working with a lot of money, and we have a kind of doc approach anyway. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that is as big as things got. 7.
Wow. What has the reception been like so far? I know it's shown at a few festivals, right?
Yeah,
Or
it premiered in Italy, Torino Film Festival, and
that's amazing.
it's played Alabama twice somehow, which is good. It's just
Yeah.
very strange. And yeah, it's been good. It's funny because we do talk about the documentary stuff, and in Italy, people really thought it was a documentary, like up
Hmm.
until the end, which is really strange. Um, they didn't understand how much like we were fictionalizing, which is
Yeah.
like part of the play too. But Dale's not in a wheelchair. Dale is and he's still doing it. He's still doing his messenger service, in which, if you have seen the film and you're in New York, you might see him. You have to say hi. That is
Okay.
the
New York
requirement.
people. New York people, when you see this movie, because you're gonna go see it in Brooklyn this week, and you see Dale, you got to say hi. Yeah, there's a part where like if you think it's a documentary, there's a certain point, especially involving some rope, where you might be like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. If you've convinced yourself that it's all really happening up until that point. But I mean, it is. I really like too how there was some parts of it, and again, not spoil anything, because I want everyone to go see it. There's these sort of vaguely like psychedelic interludes that I feel like captured the mood of this person's psyche, or sort of shows the wearing down, or captures the wearing down of someone experiencing that sort of labor that I thought was done really, really well and very, very cool. I mean, if I can ask this as a general question, if you don't mind, like, how do you conceive of your work relative to like politics, like the role of art, the role of film? Do you see your work as like showing people a perspective on how things are and letting them go from there? Is there a level of didacticism in which you're hoping to use your work to teach people stuff or show people things? I just wonder how you approach what you're doing, because it seems hard, to be honest. And I think you
Yeah.
handle it very well, but I'm curious how you think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not something I necessarily have like a good answer for, or an answer where I won't
Yeah.
ramble. Um, but I'll try. I don't know. It's just something that I kind of saw myself doing anyway without like recognizing it, and then recognizing it and trying not to get too didactic in a bad way. I think
Mhm.
it could be very interesting to go like a Godard route, Brechtian route,
Mhm.
where you're just like giving it up. And there's also like that Boots Riley series.
Mhm.
What is Virgo? I'm a Virgo.
Yeah.
Where he literally does turn to the camera and is like, "This is." They has one character be like, like lay everything out, um, which is honestly cool to see. I do think there is a way in which that kind of thing, like people play too coy, and I don't want to be like that. But I want to be honest about things. I mean, for instance, in this film, um, Dale runs into a younger kid, and they do have that kind of conversation where he's like
Yeah.
talking to him about work, and he's like, "How much do you make? Like, they don't give you insurance? Like, what the hell? Like, what's going on?" And that was really nerve wracking for me, and that was something that Mitch kind of like, we didn't fight, but he was more encouraging of it. It's something that I wanted, but it is like a scary thing to do, where you're just like, oh no, this is going to be really on the nose. And how do you, once you're
Yeah.
there, you can kind of figure it out, but it's a scary thing to try to do. And I think we kept it kind of honest, where, Dale doesn't have a light bulb moment or something like that. He fights back.
Mhm.
And in a very Dale way, he does it. And I think that's pretty realistic when you're having, you don't get the whole movie, TV show thing where someone changes at the end of the episode, and you did it, like, you convinced them and now they're different forever. In real life, you can talk to people about these things and you could really convince someone, and then the next day they're it's gone, and that's because of the world we live in. Like, they're surrounded by um, more or less one way to be, one way to think, and it's like constantly, it's like a bombardment. So it's natural. It's just the way we live. But I like to capture that part too, of it being like kind of false consciousness, um, a kind of living within um, capitalism, and even understanding where you fit in it, but it's still like, what do you do? And that is the thing too, when you produce work like that, it is the question. It's just like, I'm not feeding people, I'm not housing people, those problems still exist. So what is this piece of work? And all of these works, who knows what they're going to do, but um, hopefully they stir something in people that is, good. And then hopefully we talk. We can, it's part of a conversation. And hopefully the form of the movie itself um, leads to these ideas as well, instead of it
Yeah.
just being like didactic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see I mean, not to see because I sadly will not be there, but like I can imagine the conversations that'll happen after people walk out of screenings of this and hang out in a lobby or go to a bar afterwards or whatever, because there's a lot to talk about. And I think a lot of elements too in which like one can imagine relating to different characters. And even thinking about the scene you referenced where the guy, I think he says he's like 20 or something, does it, it's kind of jarring at first, but it's because isn't he literally just like, how much money do you make? Or something like that? Or it's
It is a little bit more organic, but
no, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, no, but
Um,
it's interesting because I think it's a thing where like that is a thing that we think and a thing that I think is often like obfuscated. And I think in a sense it was good to just get at that side of it. But it was also interesting like to see the Dale or the Dale character's reaction in that sort of a sense of like, sure, but like what do you do with that? You know,
mhm.
like it is the expectation that the character, that in life one would turn around and say, "You're right, young man. Now let me magically manifest a different, economic scenario to change that," which, gets at the, I guess, contradiction of maybe the youth, the youthful attitude of identifying issues and understanding that they are immoral, and the more aged, experienced position of like, yeah, shit sucks, but what else am I supposed to do?
Mhm.
Which feels very real. Henry, do you have something else you want to
I
jump in on?
really appreciated the sound design throughout and the restraint in like not having like an overbearing score directing what you should feel. A lot of it was just through image. I was kind of curious what influences or inspirations, if any, you have as far as like this kind of style goes.
Mm. Um, I mean, in the initial stages, we were thinking of a movie medium cool, because we didn't know what we would capture, and medium cool um, incorporates a lot of reality into it with DNC protests and stuff. So that was kind of something we looked at. We looked at this movie Takeout by Sean Baker, which is really might
Mm,
be his first movie, which is also about a delivery person. Um, we were kind of looking at stuff like that and um, other kinds of narrative doc hybrids. Um, and then formatively speaking, I was really into like the Darden brothers, Michael Haneke, and then Kelly Reichardt was big
oh,
for
amazing.
me when I discovered her as like, oh, like Americans are doing this. I didn't know. So that's all like pretty within my DNA at this point. And yeah, I always thought like it's funny because I would say like Tarkovsky and stuff like that, but Tarkovsky uses music, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I just
Big
you have like
music
a weird
guy.
memory. Yeah,
I
you have a weird memory of stuff like this that's imprinted, and it's just kind of like, oh, but I remember in those movies, like you hear the wind, and you're settled on like the wind
yeah.
blowing in the air, and you feel all that stuff, and that always really stuck with me. So I've always wanted to do that and appreciate kind of the natural sounds and how they would build in moments versus like a piano or something, which is
Mhm.
pretty obvious, you know. But when you're hearing, like, the creaks of the floor and how the fan sounds and how that might build up weird tension, that's so much more interesting to me.
Yeah. Um, that was great too, because that you kind of organically answered where I was going to ask about films and filmmakers that you think about or have inspired stuff like this as well. Um, well, I just want to remind people again. I know I made you say it at the beginning, but can you shout out again where people can see this movie if they are in the right places?
Okay, well, I will say, if you are in a place that I'm not gonna say, let me know,
Mhm.
and we'll try to work something out. And
Awesome.
also, if you know of a little movie theater, hit them up, and we'll see if we could do stuff. But, this Friday to Thursday, we're having a week run at Spectacle Theater in Williamsburg and Brooklyn, and in October we're playing Tacoma Film Festival. Um, you're gonna have to look that one up. I don't know the dates, but it's in October.
Oh, amazing. I'm actually gonna hold on. I want to put your Twitter handle in the chat so people can go follow you over there to keep up to date on stuff. Um, And yeah, and if anyone too, if you, I know some of y'all are adjacent to the film industry or the independent film world. If you live in a small town, you live someplace where you know someone who runs a theater, maybe hit Chris up, hit them up, try to make it happen. I can say that, yeah, I've like genuinely enjoyed watching it, and I could genuinely imagine a lot of people having a lot to talk about after this one. And kind of like I said before, again, I just think I'm currently working on something that we're doing over at Wisecrack on sort of leftist themes in mainstream cinema. And the thing I keep thinking and watching a bunch of those movies is how inhuman they are, and how they sort of have these weird fetishizations of working people rather than getting at the actual emotional and social lives of working people in America. And I do think as well, like, the movie's obviously titled Failed State, but it does such a good job of showing the human downstream effects of the failed state without having to be like, and here's why this is bad, and here's why this is bad. So, I mean, you could do that as well. And then wait, if people do want to see Miss Me Yet, especially today, where's the most straightforward place to watch that? Is it on Means
Um,
still?
yeah, it's on Means TV. So means.tv, and then you can find it there. You don't need to have an account to watch it. It's free for anybody. I do encourage everybody, if you like what you see, to subscribe. It's a low fee and it's a
Hmm.
co-op, so we all get a piece of that pie, so to speak, and that makes us that allows us to produce more content. So yeah, but memes.tv, and look for George Bush's face. Click on that and watch it. And
I
then
just
tell your
posted a
friends.
Yeah, I just posted a link to it in the chat. So guys, it's on September 11th. If you have nothing else to do, invite some friends over, get some pizza and snacks, and watch Miss Me Yet together. And agreed with what Chris is saying about Means TV. It's an incredibly cool project. Thank you so much for coming to hang out. Sorry again for the delay and technical difficulties, but really appreciate it. Genuine, huge fan of the work that you all are doing. And please do let your colleagues on the film know as well that we're big fans and really liked it. Hopefully you can come back sometime and we can just talk about other stuff as well.
My email inbox is always open for you.
Amazing. That's so good. Thank you so much, Chris. So good to talk to you. And we'll see you again soon, hopefully.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, guys,
Goodbye.
thank you, Chris. Guys, that was Chris Bell, one of the creators of Failed State. Highly recommend checking it out. If you're in New York, I know some of you are. Please go see it. And if you do go to see it in New York and you see Chris, and like, don't be weird about it, but maybe be like, hey, saw you on the Wisecrack thing, But again, go follow him at Update the Grids on Twitter. That's what the website is called. Chris is a great tweeter as well. When we started following him a while ago, I've been a big fan since then. And then Miss Me Yet is very, very cool, like genuinely cool. It captures the Bush era, and I think Miss Me Yet is great. If you're an older person, you'll be like, oh, I remember that shit. And if you're a younger person, you'll be like, oh, it was really like that. Okay, as a treat to everyone who stuck around, we'll do a little more debate, and then we're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna fast forward to. Okay, so we're in the section where they're talking about Harris's policies changing. Let's watch a little bit of this, okay? Thanks for being here. Like the stream, follow Chris, watch his movies. Shouts to Yes Please Coffee. Again, if you're a coffee head, go to Yes Please and use code Wisecrack. Let's hit
3
it.
million homes, increased by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having
For those of you who know stuff like this, is just like building homes the way to fix the housing problem?
a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny
A fraction of $400 million is still a lot of money. I'm just saying.
Fraction, and have built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
Just the fantasy here again. This one's a fun mixture because, of course, two of the reactionary fantasies in this country. One, there's the illegal alien other who wants to destroy your life, take away your freedom. And again, if you were here earlier, we were talking about Freud's civilization and its discontent, the way in which civilization is founded on the exclusion of some other, normally through means of violence. So that's like this one fantasy. The other fantasy, and I'm going to phrase this clunkily, is that the liberals want to trans you. That they want to trans you and they want to trans your kids. And again, I think this also gets back to this obsession with sexuality, obsession with, bifurcated gender roles, things of that nature. And it's like a mashup. It's sort of like, there's a new Coke Zero product out that's Coke Zero Oreo flavored. I haven't tried it yet. I'm a sick fuck, so I kind of want to. This is like their version of Coke Zero Oreo, just taking two things and trying to mash them together in a way that strikes fear
This is a
to the heart of
liberal
people.
That would
We're almost back
She
to
wants
Dome
to confiscate
City.
your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
No one ever.
When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling.
Okay, I want to skip ahead a little bit. I'm pretty sure the next thing is on Israel and Gaza. I saw at least a bit of that, which wasn't rad.
So he said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors.
Oh, yeah, it's where Trump says he's going to send people to jail. Vote suppression.
Why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him.
I think he's literally saying that the very bad guy that rules Hungary is a fan of him.
China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way.
What's
He
up,
said
Pop
Russia
Rise?
was afraid
Shouts
of
to
him.
Romania.
I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that.
Okay, so much talk of oil and gas. I mean, honestly, guys, the Israel-Hamas thing, I watched it last night. I did watch this part. It's just this. It's the thing. It's the thing. They say the same stuff. It's not great. I kind of want it. Whoa, it's powered by C-SPAN. Wait, is this? Okay, here. I want to see where we're at here.
The history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader, upholding international rules and norms.
Okay, it's like war stuff. Let's see. I like when they show the question at the bottom because then I know what we're getting into. Let's see. This looks like a reset.
Wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Oh,
I
race.
do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned land, he owned buildings.
I feel like she wanted to say slumlord.
And he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution
That was
of
insane.
5
That's an
young
insane thing.
Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands.
Or I think the weird thing is that all of that has happened, and an unfortunate number of Americans don't care. I don't know. Maybe that's reductive, Henry, but I just think like it's not like Trump has been secret about the racism thing. And sadly, it just seems like a lot of people don't care, which makes me think that maybe like one chunk of people don't care and another chunk of Americans have conscious or unconscious racism, and they kind of like to see when someone else says that, because then they can be like, oh, at least he gets to say it. Well, you know.
Understands as I do our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger.
$50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovations.
Okay, so she's back to the $50,000 tax. I wonder too, I know we skipped a bit. I'm just wondering what other policies were discussed.
Their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000
for
young
on.
families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue.
Last chance. If anyone wants to get some super chats out, if anyone wants to become Lord of the Chat, give some memberships. It's a fun thing to do. We're going to wrap up soon, but I'm giving you a last chance to do that. I'll give you our last shout for Yes Please Coffee. This coffee absolutely rips. If you're a coffee drinker, drink Yes Please. Let's check a little more out. We'll give you a little extra since the first part was so rough today.
What has been leading in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
I'm curious what like the specifics are with the $25,000 down payment assistance with home buyers.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want to know.
Because it's sort of like they don't. But again, think about it this way: these policies, which like is good if we're giving people tax breaks if they're starting a business, it's good to help people buy a home. But note that none of these policies reflect a critique of the economic system that makes it so hard to own a business, that makes it so hard to buy a home. They're basically just saying like, the rules of the game are the rules of the game. We want to give you a couple cheat codes here and there, rather than criticizing the economic and material conditions that lead to that system, right? Because there's a way we could say housing is really expensive, and maybe that means we need nationwide rent caps. Maybe that means it should be illegal for private corporations to invest in residential housing in insane ways. Maybe it means that real estate companies shouldn't use algorithms to jack up prices in terms of home sales. Maybe it means we need new forms of nationalized or public housing. But instead, it's sort of like, let's keep real estate this privatized, a sort of speculative capital industry. But then we're going to give you some money to tap into the game. Well, we're not going to stop gambling, but we're going to give you a discount fee when you go to the tables, which is like DraftKings, right? DraftKings is like, join DraftKings and gamble, and we're going to give you $50 on your first bet. But all they're getting you to do is buy into the system. And when they, I don't know. You guys get what I'm saying? I think I'm kind of...
No, yeah, you're onto something there. Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something there. Sometimes people in the chat are better than me, and they hear the things and they put it together. So someone do that.
As opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
to defund the police.
policy.
She has a plan.
She does not.
Today. And what I said came up. They wouldn't vote for it. People in that administration.
Talking about policy.
Expensive for people. And what we
was president. 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription
It seems like their
medication for seniors
healthcare
at
plan
$2,000
is just
a
to
year.
like
And when I am president,
keep the
we will
Affordable
do that
Care
for all
Act
people,
and make
understanding
it a little better.
that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get.
But it does seem like the affordable. Again, it's like the same thing where this involves maintaining a certain structure of healthcare that's a profit building commodity, and then creating some restrictions and easier ways for people to get involved in it.
Not get rid of it.
Vice
Pass his
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
she
lot
made a
of.
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years.
Who lives in a state who has experienced manufacturing jobs, he lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm the
All
victim
right, let's watch
of
the climate
what that
change
means
thing.
in terms of
I wanna end on
losing their
this.
home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy while we have also increased domestic gas production.
It doesn't make sense. It's like, you know, I run a program where I teach kids to save themselves for marriage, but I'm also teaching them how to suck each other off real good. You know what I mean? That was not the best thing I've ever said.
Oh, so you want to teach that to kids?
Oh boy! After I get back from transing the illegal immigrants in jail,
we have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building jobs this last month. It's going, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries, and then
But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes.
Okay, here's my closing statement. Henry can have one too. In the chat, I want you to have one. Here's what it seems like is happening here. Oh, back on. This isn't surprising. Oh, back off. This isn't surprising, guys. Like, it's a vibes-based election. We're not getting clear policy either way. Kamala Harris is just saying, like, hey, we're not abjectly evil in the way that this man is abjectly evil. We have no desire to criticize the underlying economic infrastructure of the American neoliberal system. In fairness, that puts her with like every Democratic candidate ever, almost with a couple exceptions. We want to appeal to the mythos of the American dream to get people to buy into business ownership and home ownership, parts of the American mythos. So we're not saying we want to, create a more just economy. We're not talking about creating more public housing or whatever. It's sort of like, how can we get more people to buy into a certain dream of American acquisition and accumulation? Of course, having businesses and owning homes both involved in that sort of market participation. Trump, he's a fucking psychopath. We know this. Bad guy, just saying stuff. But at the end of the day, the thing, and the reason we put society of the spectacle on the thumb today is because that's what we're getting. We're getting social media spectacle. We got Taylor Swift endorsing at the end of it. We're doing our debates. We're doing our funny videos. We have our ads all over the thing. But it's a lot of spectacle that just glosses over the fact that the best case scenario is someone who, and again, this isn't unique to Kamala Harris. This is the project of the Democratic Party, to maintain the dominant structures of neoliberalism in America, to protect the market, to make Goldman Sachs happy while making life a little more bearable and protecting certain social and individual rights that are good. I feel like I'm going to say too much if I keep going, but that's where we're at with this. I think let's end here. Henry, do you have any final thoughts?
We've fallen pretty far, even within maintaining the dominant ideology of neoliberalism, from phrases like
Yeah.
"no person is illegal" towards whatever our border policies are in this debate. I was surprised by the mention of AI as part of the race to like out nationalistically beat China at whatever economic game they think we're playing. Um, but yeah, I don't really have much to say in addition to like what is seen and said within the contents of this debate.
Yeah. Nick Holmes said, "What policy changes are you looking for, Michael?" Honestly, it would just make me a lot happier if it was stuff like, you know, advocating for a version of Medicare for all, maybe arguing that like there's going to be free healthcare programs or government-sponsored healthcare under a certain income bracket or something like that. I think something more concrete on student loans and education funding would be really important. Talking about creating cheaper avenues for education, maybe even things like on technical colleges making 2-year universities free across the board. Now it's something they've worked on at the state level in many places. I would love some concrete climate policy, which we're not getting. All we're getting is stuff like we'll have some green jobs, but we'll also drill, baby, drill. I think there are ways we can talk about these things, and we're still not getting that. But I'm going to be clear. I don't know. I think voting for this will be my hot take at the end. If we're going to be real materialist about this, I think you could absolutely justify voting for Kamala Harris in the sense of it will at least create a better set of material conditions for a lot of vulnerable people, and probably create a better set of material conditions that will allow people to, if they wanted to, organize to do something better, different, etc. Not going to judge anyone who decides not to vote. Not going to judge anyone that votes for Harris. If you're going to vote for Trump, though, that's weird, dude. Don't do that. That's a weird move. I got to go. Henry has to go. You have to go. Thank you for hanging out. Double Dome Day. This is no longer 9/11. It's Double Dome Day. I guess the double domes were like the twin. No, let's go now. We got to go now. Bye.
Thanks for the double dome, y'all. Have a good weekend.